I sat in the small waiting room of St. Benedict's Hospital, my hands trembling as I held the clipboard with insurance forms I didn't understand. The fluorescent lights hummed above me, casting a sterile glow on everything, making the moment feel even more unreal. My father, William Chen, 73 years old, lay in a room down the hall recovering from what the doctor has called a minor stroke. Minor. The word felt like a cruel joke when I looked at his pale face through the window, his mouth slightly open, a thin tube running into his nose. My sister Jennifer sat beside me, scrolling through her phone with the kind of casual indifference that made my stomach turn. She had arrived 30 minutes after I called her, wearing designer sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, her hair perfectly styled as if she had just come from a salon appointment rather than rushing to see our dying father. "Can you put that away?" I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Dad just had a stroke." Jennifer looked at me with those cold blue eyes that had become so familiar over the past 5 years, ever since she married Bradley Westbrook, a real estate developer who wore expensive suits and had a smile that never quite reached his eyes. "I'm handling something important, Rachel," she said, not even bothering to lower her voice. "Bradley and I are closing on a property deal this week. Some of us have actual responsibilities." Actual responsibilities. The words stung more than they should have. I was a middle school teacher making $47,000 a year, living in a modest apartment in a neighborhood that was slowly gentrifying around me. Jennifer lived in a 3-story house in the suburbs with a pool, 2 luxury cars, and a lifestyle that seemed impossibly expensive even for someone married to a successful developer. But I knew the truth that Jennifer worked very hard to hide. I knew that every month for the past 3 years, my father had been transferring $3,200 into her bank account. I knew because I had seen the statements when I helped Dad organize his finances last Christmas. I knew because I had watched him skip his medications to save money, eating canned soup for dinner while Jennifer posted photos of expensive restaurant meals on social media. The door to the waiting room opened, and a nurse walked in. She was older, maybe in her late 50s, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had seen too much human suffering. She looked at both of us, then specifically at me. "Are you Rachel Chen?" she asked. "Yes." I stood up quickly, my heart racing. "Is my father okay?" "He's stable," she said, and I felt my shoulders drop with relief. "But I need to speak with you about something, alone if possible." Jennifer glanced up from her phone, suddenly interested. "Anything you need to say to my sister, you can say in front of me. I'm his daughter, too." The nurse's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes, something that looked like warning. "It's a matter regarding some paperwork that came through earlier today. I think Rachel should hear this first." Jennifer's face hardened, but she waved her hand dismissively. "Fine, I need to call Bradley anyway." She stood up and walked out of the room, her heels clicking against the linoleum floor with sharp, irritated sounds. As soon as the door closed, the nurse's entire demeanor changed. She sat beside me, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Your father woke up about an hour ago. He was confused, disoriented, which is normal after a stroke. Your sister arrived before you did." "Yes, I know. I called her right after I called the ambulance." The nurse nodded slowly. "While your father was confused, your sister had him sign some papers, legal documents. I saw them because I was in the room checking his vitals." My blood ran cold. "What kind of documents?" "I'm not entirely sure, but I saw the words power of attorney at the top of one page and property transfer on another." The nurse leaned closer, her voice even quieter now. "Your father's signature was barely legible. His hand was shaking. He kept asking what he was signing, and your sister kept telling him it was just hospital paperwork, insurance forms, nothing to worry about." The room seemed to tilt around me. I gripped the edge of the chair to steady myself. "That's not legal," I said, my voice coming out strangled. "He just had a stroke. He's not in any condition to sign legal documents." "I know. That's why I'm telling you. I've been a nurse for 32 years and I've seen this kind of thing before. family members taking advantage of a vulnerable moment. It's more common than you'd think." She paused, her eyes filled with something that looked like beauty. "Your father kept saying your name while he was signing those papers. He kept saying, 'Where's Rachel? I need Rachel.'" The tears came before I could stop them. Hot, angry tears that blurred my vision and made my throat ache. "Why didn't you stop her?" I asked, even though I knew it wasn't fair to blame this woman who was trying to help me. "I tried," the nurse said softly. "I suggested she wait until he was more coherent, but she insisted it couldn't wait. She said something about needing to protect the family assets while he was incapacitated. And technically, I can't physically prevent family members from having conversations with patients or having them sign things. I can only document what I observe and tell you what I saw." "Where is she now?" "She left about 10 minutes before you arrived. She said she had an important meeting." The nurse stood up, preparing to leave. "I probably shouldn't have told you any of this. It could cost me my job if anyone finds out. But I have a father too, and I'd want someone to tell me if this was happening to him." "Thank you," I managed to say through my tears. "Thank you so much." "Don't sign anything else," the nurse said as she walked toward the door. "Not until you know exactly what your sister is doing." After she left, I sat alone in that sterile waiting room, my mind racing through years of memories I had tried so hard to ignore, all the warning signs I had dismissed because Jennifer was my sister, because family was supposed to mean something, because I wanted to believe that blood ties were stronger than greed. I remembered last Thanksgiving when Jennifer had arrived late to Dad's house with Bradley, both of them dressed like they were attending a business meeting rather than a family dinner. I had spent all morning helping Dad cook the turkey and prepare the side dishes, setting the table with the good china that Mom had left us before she died 6 years ago. Jennifer had barely eaten anything, pushing the food around her plate while checking her phone every few minutes. When Dad had tried to talk about his plans to update his will, Jennifer had immediately perked up, leaning forward with sudden interest. "You know, Dad," she had said with that sweet voice she used when she wanted something, "Bradley has a lawyer friend who specializes in estate planning. We could set up a meeting, make sure everything is properly organized. You're getting older, and we need to make sure you're protected." Protected. Even then, the word had sounded wrong coming from her mouth. Dad had smiled, patting her hand. "That's sweet of you, honey, but I already have everything set up. Your mother and I made sure of that years ago." Jennifer's smile had frozen on her face for just a moment, a flash of something cold and calculating in her eyes, before she recovered. "Of course, Dad. I just worry about you, that's all. Living in this big house all alone, managing all your finances by yourself." "I'm not alone," Dad had said, glancing at me. "Rachel comes over twice a week. She helps me with everything I need." "Rachel has her own life, Dad," and Jennifer said, and there was an edge to her voice now. "She can't be expected to drop everything to take care of you forever. You need a more permanent solution." I let it go that day, telling myself that Jennifer was just concerned, that she meant well even if her words came out wrong. But now, sitting in this hospital waiting room with the nurse's warning echoing in my head, I saw that conversation differently. She hadn't been concerned. She had been laying groundwork. I pulled out my phone and called my father's lawyer, Martin Greenfield, a man who had known our family for 20 years. He answered on the third ring. "Rachel? How's your father? I heard about the stroke." "He's stable," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "Martin, I need to ask you something. Has Jennifer contacted you recently about my father's estate or any legal documents?" There was a pause, long enough to make my heart sink. "She called me 3 weeks ago," he said slowly. "She wanted to discuss having your father sign a durable power of attorney, naming her as the primary agent. She said your father had requested it, that he was worried about his health and wanted to make sure someone could handle his affairs if something happened." "What did you tell her?" I told her I'd need to speak with your father directly before preparing any such documents. That's standard procedure. But she became quite insistent, said it was urgent, that your father was deteriorating mentally and might not be competent much longer. He's not deteriorating mentally, I said, my voice rising with anger. He's sharp as ever. He does the crossword puzzle every morning. He manages his own finances. I know, Rachel, Martin interrupted gently. That's why I was suspicious of her claims. I've had lunch with your father twice in the past month. He's perfectly competent. So I told Jennifer I wouldn't prepare any documents without speaking to William directly. And she hung up on me. She just had him sign papers at the hospital while he was confused and disoriented from the stroke. A nurse told me she saw documents labeled power of attorney and property transfer. Martin's sharp intake of breath told me everything I needed to know about how serious this was. Those documents won't hold up in court if we can prove he wasn't competent at the time of signing, Martin said. But Rachel, you need to act fast. If she files those documents with the county clerk, it becomes much more complicated. Even if we eventually overturn them, she could do a lot of damage in the meantime. What kind of damage? Access to his bank accounts, ability to sell his property, authority to make medical decisions. A power of attorney is an incredibly powerful legal instrument. In the wrong hands, it's a weapon. I felt sick. What do I do? First, get copies of whatever she had him sign. Hospital records, security footage if possible, the nurse's statement. Second, I'm going to file an emergency petition first thing tomorrow morning to freeze any changes to your father's estate until we can determine his competency and the validity of those signatures. Third, don't let your sister anywhere near your father alone, not for a second. After I hung up with Martin, I sat staring at my phone, my mind replaying every interaction I'd had with Jennifer over the past few years. Every time she'd called Dad asking for money, every time she had shown up at his house with Bradley and left with a check, every time she had smiled that sweet smile while bleeding him dry. I remember the time 2 years ago when Jennifer had called Dad crying, saying she and Bradley were about to lose their house, that the bank was threatening foreclosure. Dad had immediately withdrawn $28,000 from his retirement savings and given it to her. I had found out only because I saw the bank statement a month later. Dad, you can't afford to give away that kind of money, I had said, trying to keep my voice calm even though I wanted to scream. She's my daughter, he had replied simply. She needed help. But what about you? What about your retirement, your medical expenses? I'll be fine, Rachel. I have enough. And family takes care of family. Family takes care of family. The words haunted me now, twisted into something ugly by Jennifer's manipulation. I stood up and walked down the hall to my father's room. Through the window, I could see him lying in the bed, his eyes closed, looking smaller and more fragile than I'd ever seen him. My father, who had worked 2 jobs to put Jennifer and me through college. My father, who had taken care of Mom for 3 years of cancer treatments, never complaining, never asking for help. My father, who had always believed the best in people, especially his own children. I pushed open the door quietly. His eyes opened, and when he saw me, he smiled weakly. Rachel, you came? I sat down beside his bed, taking his hand. It felt cold, thin, the skin papery beneath my fingers. Of course I came, Dad. I'll always come. Jennifer was here, he said, his voice confused. She had papers. I think I signed something. I can't remember. Everything's fuzzy. Don't worry about it, Dad. Just rest. But he shook his head, agitation creeping into his expression. No, it's important. She said something about protecting the house. She said you agreed. Did you agree, Rachel? My heart broke.
No, Dad, I didn't agree to anything. I'm so tired, he said, his eyes closing again. So tired of being a burden. You're not a burden, I said fiercely, squeezing his hand. You're never a burden. But he had already drifted back to sleep, his breathing shallow but steady. I stayed with him until visiting hours ended, then drove home through streets blurred by tears. My apartment felt cold and empty when I walked in, but I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat on my couch in the darkness, my phone in my hand, staring at Jennifer's contact information. Part of me wanted to call her, to scream at her, to demand an explanation. But another part of me, the part that had learned to be strategic over years of watching her manipulate people, knew that confronting her now would only put her on guard. She would have time to cover her tracks, to create excuses, to turn Dad against me. Instead, I opened my laptop and started documenting everything I could remember. Every suspicious conversation, every transfer of money, every time Jennifer had called Dad asking for help and then disappeared until she needed something else. I created a spreadsheet with dates, amounts, and descriptions. The numbers made me sick. In the past 5 years alone, I calculated that Jennifer had taken approximately $187,000 from our father. Some of it in direct transfers, some in paid bills, some in loans that were never repaid. $187,000 from a man living on Social Security and a modest pension, a man who had $243,000 in savings when Mom died. My phone buzzed with a text message. Jennifer. Hey, sis. I know today was scary with Dad's stroke. Just wanted to let you know that I took care of some important paperwork while I was there. Don't worry about anything. I've got it all handled. You can focus on your teaching. I know how busy you are.
The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She was essentially telling me to stay out of it, to let her handle Dad's affairs, to trust her. And a year ago, maybe even a month ago, I might have believed her. I might have been relieved that someone else was taking charge, that I didn't have to carry the burden alone. But now I saw the message for what it was, a warning, a claim of territory. I typed and deleted 3 different responses before finally settling on, "We should talk about whatever you had Dad sign. When are you free?" Her response came immediately. Nothing to talk about, just standard stuff to make sure he's taken care of if something happens. You worry too much. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Martin Greenfield again, even though it was nearly 9 o'clock at night. "I need you to do something else," I said when he answered. "I need you to get a complete record of all transactions from my father's bank accounts for the past 5 years. Every transfer, every check, everything." "Rachel, that's going to take some time, and it might upset your father if he finds out we're investigating. He won't find out from me. And Martin, when you see those records, you're going to understand why this is necessary." That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about all the times I had seen the warning signs and ignored them, all the times Dad had looked tired, defeated, and I had told myself he was just getting older. All the times Jennifer had swooped in with her perfectly styled hair and expensive clothes, making me feel like the boring, responsible sister who didn't understand the complexities of adult life. I thought about the time, 3 years ago, when Dad had mentioned wanting to sell the family house and move into a smaller condo. Jennifer had immediately objected, saying the house was too important to the family, too full of memories. At the time, I had agreed with her, thinking she was being sentimental. Now I realized she had been protecting an asset she planned to inherit. The house was worth at least $620,000 in the current market. If Dad sold it and moved into a smaller place, that money would disappear into living expenses, medical care, the simple cost of existing. But if he kept it until he died, it would pass to Jennifer and me. Except with a power of attorney, Jennifer could make sure it passed to her alone. The next morning, I took a personal day from school and went back to the hospital. The same nurse from yesterday, whose name I learned was Carol, saw me in the hallway and pulled me aside. "Your father's doing better today," she said. "More alert, more coherent. The doctor says if he continues improving, he might be discharged in a few days." "Did my sister come back?" Carol's expression darkened. "She called 3 times asking about his condition. The last time she asked to speak with the hospital's legal department about getting authorization for medical decisions. What did they tell her?" "That without proper documentation, we can't give her any special authority. But Rachel, she's not going to give up. I've seen people like her before. They're relentless." "I'm not giving up either," I said. When I entered Dad's room, he was sitting up in bed, looking more like himself. The color had returned to his face and his eyes were clear. "Rachel," he said, and I could hear the strength returning to his voice. "I've been trying to remember yesterday. Jennifer was here, wasn't she?" I sat down beside him, taking his hand again. "Yes, Dad, she was here. Do you remember what you talked about?" He frowned, concentration creasing his forehead. "She brought papers. She said they were important, that I needed to sign them right away. She said you knew about it, that you and she had discussed it together." "What else did she say?" "She said the house needed to be protected, that there were legal issues, something about taxes and estate planning. It was all very confusing. My head hurt, and I couldn't think clearly. She kept pushing the papers in front of me, putting a pin in my hand." "Did you read what you were signing?" He shook his head slowly, and I could see the shame in his eyes. "I couldn't focus. The words kept blurring. I trusted her. She's my daughter. I thought she was helping me." I squeezed his hand. "Dad, I need to tell you something, and it's going to be hard to hear. She told me she was in trouble. She told me she needed help. I thought I was being a good father. You were being a good father. She was being a bad daughter." He was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke again, his voice was hard in a way I'd never heard before. "What are those papers she had me sign?" "We don't know for sure yet, but Martin thinks they're a power of attorney and possibly a property transfer document. If they're valid, they give Jennifer control over your finances and potentially the right to sell the house." "She can't do that. The house is supposed to go to both of you." "Not if she has power of attorney. Then she can do whatever she wants with your assets. She could sell the house, empty your bank accounts, take everything, and there wouldn't be much you or I could do about it until we could prove the documents were signed under duress." Dad's face flushed red with anger. "That's not going to happen. We're going to stop her. Martin is filing an emergency petition today to freeze everything. But Dad, we need you to be clear about this. We need you to state on the record that you didn't understand what you were signing, that you weren't competent at the time, and that you don't want Jennifer to have power of attorney." "She's not getting a damn thing," he said, and the steel in his voice made me sit up straighter. "Not one more dollar, not one more piece of my life. I'm done." The transformation was remarkable. The confused, vulnerable man from yesterday was gone, replaced by the father I remembered from my childhood, the one who had stood up to my mother's family when they tried to interfere in their marriage, the one who had fought the school board to get me into the gifted program, the one who had never backed down from protecting the people he loved. "There's something else I need to tell you," Dad said, his jaw set. "Something I've never told anyone except your mother." "What is it?" "When Jennifer married Bradley 5 years ago, she asked me to give them money for a down payment on their house. She said it was a loan, that they'd pay me back within 2 years. I gave them $85,000. I felt the blood drain from my face. That number wasn't on my spreadsheet because I hadn't known about it. Dad, that's... I know. It was stupid. But she promised, Rachel. She looked me in the eye and promised she'd pay it back. She even signed a promissory note." He paused, his voice dropping. "I have the note in my safe deposit box. She never paid back a single dollar." "We need to get that note," I said immediately.
It proves she borrowed money under false pretenses. It's evidence of a pattern of financial exploitation. There's more, Dad continued. And now he looked almost angry at himself. Last year, Jennifer told me she needed $40,000 for Bradley's business. She said it was an investment opportunity, that I'd get my money back plus interest within 6 months. I knew I shouldn't do it. Something in my gut told me it was wrong. But she cried, Rachel. She actually cried and said they were going to lose everything if I didn't help them. Did she give you anything in writing for that? Just a text message saying she'd received the money and thanking me. I pulled out my phone. Forward me that text right now. For the next 2 hours, Dad and I went through everything, building a case against Jennifer that was becoming more damning by the minute. We documented loans that were never repaid, promises that were never kept, lies that were told and retold until they became Jennifer's version of truth. My phone rang. It was Martin Greenfield. Rachel, I've filed the emergency petition today. There's a hearing scheduled for tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock, but I need to warn you, your sister is going to fight back. Her husband Bradley called my office an hour ago, threatening to file a restraining order on you for harassing their family. Harassing? I haven't even spoken to her except for one text message. I know, but that's how people like this operate. They go on the offensive, try to make you look like the aggressor. Be prepared for this to get ugly. The hearing the next day was held in a gray courthouse that smelled like old paper and broken promises. Jennifer arrived with Bradley and a lawyer I didn't recognize, a sharp-looking woman in an expensive suit who carried herself like she'd never lost a case. Jennifer looked different than she had at the hospital. Her hair was pulled back severely, her makeup minimal, her clothes conservative. She was playing the role of concerned daughter, and she was playing it well. When she saw me sitting with Dad and Martin, her eyes widened with what looked like genuine hurt. Rachel, what's going on? Why are we in court? You know exactly why we're here, I said, keeping my voice level. I really don't. I was trying to help Dad, and now you're attacking me for it? I'm your sister. How could you do this?
Bradley put his hand on her shoulder, a gesture that was clearly meant to look protective but struck me as controlling. "We're here to fight for William's best interests," he said, his voice smooth and practiced. "Someone needs to make sure he's properly cared for as he ages." "He's cared for just fine," I shot back, "by me, while you've been draining his bank account." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. "That's not fair, Rachel. Every dollar Dad gave us was because he wanted to help. He loves us. He wants to see us succeed." "He wanted to help," I said. "You wanted to take." Before the argument could escalate, the bailiff called us into the courtroom. Judge Patricia Morrison, a woman in her 60s with shark eyes and a no-nonsense expression, took her seat behind the bench. Martin presented our case first, laying out the facts of Jennifer's financial exploitation, the suspicious timing of the documents signed at the hospital, Dad's compromised mental state at the time of signing, and the pattern of manipulation that had been ongoing for years. Then it was Jennifer's lawyer's turn. She painted a picture of Jennifer as a devoted daughter who had been helping her aging father manage his affairs, protecting him from his own poor financial decisions, ensuring he would be cared for as his health declined. "Your Honor," Jennifer's lawyer said smoothly, "Mr. Chen voluntarily signed these documents. He was alert and responsive at the time of signings. The hospital nurse who witnessed the signatures can attest to that fact." "Actually," Martin interjected, standing up, "we have a sworn statement from a different nurse who was in the room, stating that Mr. Chen was confused, disoriented, and repeatedly asked what he was signing. She states that Jennifer Chen told him these were routine hospital forms, when they were in fact legal documents that would transfer significant control over his estate." Jennifer's lawyer faltered for just a moment, and I saw doubt flicker across Jennifer's face. Judge Morrison looked at my father, who had been sitting quietly through all of this. "Mr. Chen,
I need to hear from you directly. Did you understand what you were signing when your daughter presented you with these documents? Dad stood up slowly, his shoulders straight, his voice clear and strong. No, Your Honor, I did not. I had just suffered a stroke. I was confused and scared. My daughter told me these were papers to help protect me, that Rachel had agreed to everything, and that I needed to sign immediately. I trusted her because she's my daughter. I've spent the past 5 years trusting her, giving her money every time she asked, believing she would pay me back, believing she cared about me as much as I cared about her. I was wrong. The courtroom was silent. Jennifer's face had gone pale. Your Honor, I have evidence that my daughter Jennifer has taken approximately $272,000 from me over the past 5 years through a combination of unpaid loans, false promises, and manipulation. I have promissory notes that were never honored, text messages proving she received money under false pretenses, and bank statements showing a pattern of large transfers that coincided with her requests for help. I'm asking this court to void the documents I signed under duress and to prevent my daughter from having any control over my finances or property. Judge Morrison looked at the papers in front of her, then at Jennifer, then back at my father. Miss Chen, she said, addressing Jennifer's lawyer, do you have evidence to refute these claims? Jennifer's lawyer shuffled through her papers, clearly unprepared for the depth of documentation we had brought. Your Honor, family loans are common. Just because money was given doesn't mean it was exploitation. It's exploitation when the loans are never repaid and the borrower uses deception to obtain more money. And it's absolutely exploitation when someone uses a medical crisis to obtain legal documents that transfer wealth and control. She turned to Jennifer directly. Miss Westbrook, do you have anything to say for yourself? Jennifer stood up, and I could see her hands shaking. For a moment, I thought she might actually tell the truth, might actually admit what she had done. But then her face hardened, and I saw the Jennifer I had come to recognize over the past few years, the one who never admitted fault, who always had an excuse, who always made herself the victim. Your Honor, my father is elderly and easily influenced by my sister, who has always been jealous of my success. She's manipulating him, turning him against me because she wants to inherit everything herself. I was only trying to protect him from her. The words hung in the air like poison.
Judge Morrison's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes hardened. I've been a judge for 17 years, she said quietly. I've heard every excuse, every justification, every manipulation tactic that exists. What I see here is a clear pattern of financial elder abuse. The documents signed at the hospital are void. They were obtained under duress while Mr. Chen was medically compromised. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order preventing Jennifer Westbrook from contacting William Chen or accessing any of his financial accounts. If there are outstanding promissory notes, Mr. Chen has the right to pursue legal action to recover those funds. Jennifer's face crumbled. Dad, please, don't let her do this. I'm your daughter. I love you. Dad looked at her, and I saw something I had never seen in his eyes before when he looked at Jennifer. Disappointment so deep, it was almost pity. You loved my money, he said quietly. You never loved me. Jennifer burst into tears, loud, dramatic sobs that might have worked on him a year ago, a month ago, maybe even a week ago. But now they just sounded hollow. Bradley grabbed Jennifer's arm and pulled her toward the exit, whispering harshly in her ear. Jennifer's lawyer gathered her papers and followed them out, leaving Martin, Dad, and me alone in the courtroom with Judge Morrison. Mr. Chen, the judge said, her voice gentler now, I'm sorry you had to go through this. No parent should have to face this kind of betrayal from their child. I hope you take steps to protect yourself going forward. I will, Your Honor. Thank you. Outside the courthouse, Dad and I stood in the sunshine, neither of us quite knowing what to say. 5 years of tension, manipulation, and pain had been exposed and addressed in a single afternoon, but the wounds were still fresh. I can't believe she actually tried to say you were manipulating me, Dad said finally, shaking his head, as if you hadn't been the one taking care of me all along. She had to try something. She couldn't admit the truth. The truth is I was a fool. I let her take advantage of me for years. I ignored the warning signs. I chose to believe her lies because believing them was easier than facing the truth about what kind of person she had become. You weren't a fool, Dad. You were a father who loved your daughter. There's nothing foolish about that. We went back to Dad's house that evening, the house that Jennifer had tried to steal, and Dad went straight to his study. He pulled out file folders, bank statements, old letters, everything he had documenting his relationship with Jennifer over the years. I need to see it all. I need to understand how I let this happen. I helped him go through the documents, and what we found was worse than I had imagined. It wasn't just the big loans. There were hundreds of smaller transactions. $500 here for car repairs that probably never happened, $1,200 there for medical bills that insurance should have covered, $800 for a supposed emergency that was never explained. Death by 1,000 cuts, each one small enough to rationalize, together amounting to a fortune. She's been doing this since the year after Mom died, Dad said, staring at a bank statement from 6 years ago. She started small, testing to see how much she could get away with. Then the amounts grew bigger and bigger. Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have been paying more attention. I should have... No, he interrupted firmly. This isn't your fault, Rachel. You were working, living your life. You couldn't have known. I was the one who was supposed to protect our family's assets. I was the one who failed. You didn't fail, Dad. You trusted your daughter. That's what parents are supposed to do. Dad looked at me with eyes that suddenly seemed much older than his 73 years. I need to do something. I can't just let this go. She needs to face consequences. Martin said you could file a civil suit to recover the money from the promissory notes. That's not enough. She committed fraud, Rachel. She lied. She manipulated. She stole. That's criminal. Over the next 2 weeks, Dad and I worked with Martin and a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit to build a criminal case against Jennifer. We documented every loan, every false promise, every instance of manipulation. We found emails where Jennifer had lied about medical emergencies to extract money. We found text messages where she had pressured Dad to give her cash immediately, claiming dire circumstances that later proved to be fabricated. The detective, a woman named Sarah Martinez, who specialized in elder abuse cases, told us that Jennifer's behavior fit a classic pattern. Financial exploitation of elderly parents is one of the most underreported crimes in America, Detective Martinez said as we sat in Dad's living room going through the evidence. Most parents won't report it because they don't want to see their children go to jail. They'd rather suffer in silence than destroy their family. But what they don't realize is that the family is already destroyed. The child destroyed it the moment they chose greed over love. Dad nodded slowly, his jaw tight. I don't want her to go to jail. I just want her to stop. I want her to understand what she's done.
Detective Martinez gave him a sympathetic look. Mr. Chen, people like your daughter rarely understand what they've done. In their minds, they're always the victim, always justified in their actions. But filing charges sends a message not just to her, but to other potential victims. It says that this behavior has consequences. 3 weeks after the court hearing, Detective Martinez called to tell us that the district attorney had decided to file criminal charges against Jennifer for financial exploitation of an elderly person, forgery, and fraud. Each charge carried potential prison time. When the news hit, my phone exploded with messages. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years, family friends, even some of Jennifer's friends who had somehow gotten my number. Most of the messages were some variation of the same theme. How could you do this to your sister? She made mistakes, but she's family. You're tearing the family apart. Each message felt like a knife. Part of me wanted to respond to every single one, to explain exactly what Jennifer had done, to make them understand that I wasn't the villain in this story, but I didn't. I blocked the numbers I didn't recognize and ignored the rest. Dad got even more messages, including one from Jennifer herself, sent from Bradley's phone since the restraining order prohibited direct contact. Dad, please call off Rachel. She's making you think I'm a monster when all I ever did was love you. Bradley and I are losing everything because of these false charges. Our friends won't talk to us. His business partners are pulling out. Our reputation is destroyed. Is this what you wanted? To ruin your daughter's life because Rachel convinced you I was stealing from you? I made mistakes, but I don't deserve this. Please, Dad, I'm begging you. Drop the charges and we can be a family again. Dad showed me the message with trembling hands. She still doesn't get it, he said, his voice hollow. She still thinks this is about mistakes. She still thinks she's the victim. What are you going to do? I asked. He deleted the message without responding. I'm going to let the justice system do what I should have done years ago. Hold her accountable. The preliminary hearing was held on a cold morning in November, 6 weeks after Jennifer had tried to steal Dad's life out from under him. The courtroom was packed with people I recognized, family members who had taken Jennifer's side, who believed her version of events, where she was the devoted daughter being persecuted by a jealous sister and a confused old man. I sat behind Dad and Martin, feeling the weight of their stares on the back of my neck. Jennifer sat at the defendant's table with her lawyer, a different attorney this time, a criminal defense specialist who wore an expensive suit and had the kind of face that looked perpetually skeptical of everything. Bradley wasn't there. According to the gossip that had filtered back to me through a cousin who was still speaking to me, Bradley had filed for divorce 2 weeks after the criminal charges were filed. He had released a statement through his company saying he had been unaware of Jennifer's financial dealings with her father and was cooperating fully with the investigation. Classic Bradley. Protecting his business interests and throwing Jennifer under the bus the moment things got difficult. Jennifer looked smaller than I remembered, her shoulders hunched, her expensive clothes gone, replaced by a plain gray dress that made her look washed out and tired. When she saw Dad, her eyes filled with tears, but he looked straight ahead, his expression unreadable. The prosecutor, a young woman named Amanda Torres, laid out the case systematically. She presented bank records, promissory notes, text messages, emails, and witness statements. She called Detective Martinez to the stand, who explained the pattern of exploitation. She called Martin Greenfield, who testified about Jennifer's attempts to get him to prepare power of attorney without consulting Dad directly. She called Carol, the nurse from the hospital, who described in detail how Jennifer pressured Dad to sign documents while he was confused and medically compromised. Then she called my father to the stand. Dad walked slowly to the witness box, his hand trembling slightly as he placed it on the Bible to be sworn in. He looked older than his 73 years, worn down by betrayal and loss. Amanda Torres began gently, asking Dad about his relationship with Jennifer, about the loans he had given her, about the promises she had made. Mr. Chen, can you tell the court about the first time your daughter asked you for money after your wife passed away? Dad cleared his throat. It was about 6 months after the funeral. Jennifer called me crying, saying that she and Bradley were having trouble making their mortgage payment. She said they were going to lose their house if I didn't help them. I gave her $4,500. She promised me she'd pay me back within 3 months.
Did she pay you back? No, but 3 months later, she asked for more money. Another $3,800, this time for medical bills.
Then, a few months after that, it was car repairs. Then, Bradley's business expenses. It never stopped. Over the 5 years since your wife died, how much money did you give your daughter? Dad's voice was steady, but I could hear the pain underneath. According to the records we've compiled, approximately $272,000. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Jennifer's face flushed red. And how much of that money was paid back? None of it. Did you give this money willingly? Dad paused, and I could see him struggling with the question. I gave it because she asked for it, because she told me she needed it, because she made me believe that if I didn't give it to her, something terrible would happen. Was it willing? I don't know anymore. I know I felt like I had no choice. I felt like if I said no, I would be failing as a father. That's called coercion, Mr. Chen, Amanda said softly. That's called manipulation. Jennifer's lawyer stood up. Objection, Your Honor. The prosecutor is leading the litness. Sustained, the judge said. Ms. Torres, please rephrase. Mr. Chen, did your daughter ever threaten to cut off contact with you if you didn't give her money? Not directly, but she would stop calling, stop visiting. Then suddenly she'd show up again, friendly and loving, right before she needed something. I learned that when Jennifer was being nice to me, it meant she wanted money. The words seemed to physically hurt Jennifer. She put her head in her hands, her shoulders shaking. Tell the court about what happened at the hospital. Dad described the stroke, the confusion, waking up to find Jennifer standing over him with papers. He described asking what he was signing and being told they were just routine forms. He described the moment when he realized, days later, what he had actually signed and the sick feeling in his stomach when he understood how close he had come to losing everything. Mr. Chen, do you love your daughter? Amanda asked. The question seemed to surprise him. He was quiet for a long moment. I love who I thought she was, he said finally. I love the little girl who used to sit on my lap and read books with me. I love the teenager who hugged me when I taught her to drive. I love the person I wanted her to be. But the woman sitting over there, the one who lied to me, who stole from me, who tried to take advantage of my stroke to steal my house, I don't know her, and I'm not sure I ever did. Jennifer let out a sob, loud enough that the judge had to call for order. When it was Jennifer's lawyer's turn to cross-examine, he tried to paint Dad as senile, confused, unable to manage his own affairs. He suggested that Jennifer had been acting out of love, trying to protect her father from himself. Isn't it true, Mr. Chen, that you've been forgetting things lately, misplacing your keys, forgetting appointments? I'm 73 years old, Dad said calmly. I forget things occasionally, just like everyone else. But I'm not senile, and I know exactly what my daughter did to me. Isn't it possible that you gave your daughter money and simply forgot about it, that you agreed to help her and then later regretted it? I have bank statements, promissory notes, and text messages documenting every transaction. I didn't forget anything. I was taken advantage of. The lawyer tried for another hour to break Dad's testimony, but Dad was unshakable. Every question was answered clearly, calmly, with a kind of quiet dignity that made the lawyer's aggressive tactics look desperate and cruel. When Dad finally stepped down from the witness stand, he looked exhausted but unbowed. Then it was Jennifer's turn to testify. Her lawyer had clearly coached her carefully. She took the stand with tears already streaming down her face, her voice shaking as she described her version of events. I never meant to hurt my father, she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Every dollar he gave me was because he wanted to help. He loved helping us. It made him feel useful, like he was still taking care of his children the way he did when we were young. Yes, I asked for money. Yes, I didn't pay back the loans as quickly as I should have, but it was never malicious. I always intended to pay him back. I still intend to pay him back. What about the documents you had him sign at the hospital? Amanda asked when it was her turn to cross-examine. I was scared, Jennifer said, her voice catching. He had just had a stroke. The doctors were saying things about his prognosis, about his cognitive function. I thought if something happened to him, if he became unable to manage his affairs, someone needed to have legal authority to help him. I thought I was being responsible.
So you waited until he was at his most vulnerable, when he had just suffered a medical crisis, when he was confused and frightened, to have him sign legal documents that would give you control over his assets? It wasn't like that, Jennifer protested. I thought I was helping. Did you tell him what he was signing? I told him they were important papers. Did you tell him specifically that he was signing over power of attorney and transferring property rights? Jennifer hesitated just long enough for the truth to be obvious. I don't remember exactly what I said. You don't remember, or you don't want to admit that you lied to him. Objection! Jennifer's lawyer stood up. Argumentative. Withdrawn, Amanda said with a slight smile. Ms. Westbrook, you testified that you always intended to pay your father back. Do you have any documentation showing attempts to repay even a small portion of the $272,000 you took from him? I made verbal agreements. Documentation, Ms. Westbrook, checks, bank transfers, payment plans, anything showing that you made any effort whatsoever to repay your father. Jennifer was silent. I'll take that as a no, Amanda said. Let me ask you something else. If your father hadn't had a stroke, if a nurse hadn't witnessed what you were doing and warned your sister, would you have continued taking money from him until there was nothing left? I would never. You already did. You took $272,000 from an elderly man living on Social Security and a modest pension. You took so much that he had to skip medications to save money. You took so much that he was eating canned soup for dinner while you posted pictures of expensive meals on social media. You took so much that when he needed money for his own care, there was barely anything left. And then, when you thought you could get away with it, you tried to take everything else. Isn't that the truth? Jennifer's face crumpled. I made mistakes. I know I did. But I'm not a monster. I'm not. Her voice broke into sobs. The preliminary hearing ended with the judge ordering Jennifer to stand trial on all charges. The trial date was set for February, 3 months away. As we left the courthouse that day, I saw several of the family members who had been giving me dirty looks earlier. But now, their expressions had changed. They looked uncertain, troubled, as if they were reassessing everything they thought they knew about the situation. One of them, my Aunt Patricia, Mom's younger sister, approached us hesitantly. "William," she said softly, "I owe you an apology. I thought Rachel was exaggerating, that this was just a family disagreement blown out of proportion. I didn't realize how serious it was." Dad nodded stiffly. Most people don't realize until they see the evidence laid out in front of them. Jennifer is very good at playing the victim. Is there anything I can do? Aunt Patricia asked. You can stop telling Rachel she's destroying the family, Dad said firmly. She's the one who saved me. If it weren't for her, I'd have nothing left. Over the next 3 months, as we waited for the trial, Dad underwent a transformation. The defeated, exhausted man who had nearly lost everything slowly became someone stronger, someone who had survived betrayal and come out the other side determined to rebuild his life.
He started seeing a therapist who specialized in family trauma. He joined a support group for victims of financial elder abuse, where he met other parents who had been exploited by their children. He learned that he wasn't alone, that his story wasn't unique, that there were thousands of families dealing with the same painful betrayal. He also started taking steps to rebuild his financial security. Martin helped him create a new estate plan with ironclad protections. He set up a trust with me as the trustee, ensuring that his assets would be protected and distributed according to his wishes. He changed all his passwords, closed old bank accounts, opened new ones at a different bank. And he started living again. He went to dinner with friends he had been too embarrassed to see while Jennifer was draining his accounts. He took a trip to visit his brother in Arizona, the first vacation he had taken in 5 years. He started playing chess at the senior center, joining a book club, rediscovering hobbies he had abandoned when every spare moment and dollar had been consumed by Jennifer's endless needs. I watched him come back to life, and it was like watching spring arrive after a long, bitter winter. The trial began on a gray February morning. The courtroom was less crowded this time. Most of the family members who had supported Jennifer apparently deciding that showing up would require them to confront uncomfortable truths they preferred to ignore. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. Amanda Torres called witness after witness, each one adding another piece to the puzzle of Jennifer's deception. She called Dad's financial advisor, who testified that he had warned Jennifer multiple times that she was putting her father's retirement at risk. She called several of Jennifer and Bradley's friends, who reluctantly admitted that they had heard Jennifer bragging about how easy it was to get money from the old man.
She called a handwriting expert who testified that the signatures on some of the promissory notes appeared to have been signed under duress or while the signer was impaired. The most damning testimony came from Bradley himself, who had been granted immunity in exchange for his cooperation. He took the stand looking uncomfortable, avoiding looking at Jennifer. "Tell the court about the conversations you had with your wife regarding her father's money," Amanda said. Bradley shifted in his seat. "Jennifer talked about it a lot. She said her father had more money than he knew what to do with, that he was just going to waste it on medical bills or leave it all to some charity. She said we deserved that money more than anyone else." "Did she ever express any intention of paying him back?" "Not really. She called them loans when she talked to him, but when she talked to me, she called them inheritance advances. She said we were just getting our share early." "What about the power of attorney and property transfer documents she had him sign at the hospital?" "That was planned," Bradley said quietly. "She had been talking about getting control of his assets for months. When he had the stroke, she saw an opportunity. She said he was vulnerable, that he'd sign anything if she told him it was important. She was right." Jennifer's face went pale. Her lawyer objected strenuously, but the damage was done. "Why are you testifying against your wife?" Amanda asked. Bradley looked directly at Jennifer for the first time. "Because what she did was wrong. I went along with it, and I'm ashamed of that. But I'm not going to lie under oath to protect her. Not anymore." Jennifer's defense strategy was to paint herself as a victim of circumstances, a daughter who had been struggling financially and had turned to her father for help, never intending to hurt him. Her lawyer brought in character witnesses who testified that Jennifer was a good person, that she volunteered at her church, that she was active in her community. But Amanda Torres dismantled each witness methodically, pointing out that good people can still commit crimes, that charitable acts don't erase financial exploitation, that being nice to strangers doesn't give you the right to steal from your father. When Jennifer took the stand in her own defense, she tried to cry, but the tears seemed forced now, performed rather than genuine.
She told a story about being a devoted daughter, about always putting her family first, about trying to help her father in his old age. But when Amanda Torres cross-examined her, the story fell apart. Miss Westbrook, you testified that you were struggling financially, and that's why you needed your father's help. But according to your tax returns, you and your husband had a combined income of over $180,000 per year. Is that correct? Yes, but what? You had a nice home, 2 cars, took expensive vacations. Your social media posts show you at expensive restaurants, wearing designer clothes, living a lifestyle that most people would consider quite comfortable. So why did you need money from your father, who was living on $2,800 per month in Social Security? We had expenses. Everyone has expenses, Miss Westbrook. The difference is that most people don't steal from their elderly parents to pay for them. I wasn't stealing. Then what would you call taking money under false pretenses, promising to pay it back and never doing so, lying about emergencies to extract more money, and then trying to use a medical crisis to gain control over your father's remaining assets? Jennifer had no answer to that. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. When they came back, their verdict was unanimous on all counts. Guilty of financial exploitation of an elderly person, guilty of fraud, guilty of forgery. Jennifer collapsed when the verdict was read, her lawyer having to support her as she sobbed. The judge set sentencing for 3 weeks later. Dad sat beside me through the entire verdict, his face expressionless. When it was over, when Jennifer was led out of the courtroom still crying, he finally let out a long, shaky breath. "It's done," he whispered. "It's finally done." The sentencing hearing was brief. Jennifer's lawyer made an impassioned plea for leniency, arguing that Jennifer had already suffered enough, that she had lost her marriage, her reputation, her place in her family. He argued that prison time would serve no purpose, that probation and restitution would be more appropriate. Amanda Torres argued for the maximum sentence, pointing out that Jennifer had shown no genuine remorse, that even during the trial, she had continued to portray herself as a victim, that she had betrayed not just her father, but the sacred trust between parent and child. Judge Morrison looked at Jennifer with a profound expression of disappointment. "Miss Westbrook, I've presided over hundreds of criminal cases during my time on the bench. I've seen people commit terrible crimes for understandable reasons, driven by desperation, addiction, or circumstances beyond their control. But what you did was commit terrible crimes for no reason other than greed. You had a good income, a comfortable life, and a father who loved you, and you threw all of that away because you wanted more. You exploited your father's love and trust systematically, methodically, without remorse. And when you thought you could get away with taking everything, you didn't hesitate. That speaks to a profound lack of character and empathy that I find deeply troubling."
She sentenced Jennifer to 4 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation, and ordered her to pay full restitution of $272,000 plus interest. Jennifer screamed when the sentence was announced, a raw, desperate sound that echoed through the courtroom. "Dad, please, tell them this is too much, please." But Dad just looked at her, his expression sad but resolute, and said nothing. As they led Jennifer away, still screaming and crying, I felt Dad's hand grip mine tightly. "I failed her," he said quietly. "Somehow, somewhere, I failed to teach her the difference between love and money." "No, Dad," I said firmly. "You taught her that. She chose not to learn it." In the months that followed, Dad and I began the slow process of rebuilding our family, or what was left of it. Some relatives reached out to apologize for doubting us. Others never spoke to us again, apparently preferring to believe their own version of events rather than face the uncomfortable truth.
Dad threw himself into new activities with surprising energy. He started volunteering at a literacy program, teaching adults to read. He joined a hiking group and started taking weekend trips to nearby trails. He even started dating, much to my surprise and delight, meeting a widowed woman named Dorothy at his book club who made him laugh in a way I hadn't heard in years. We had dinner together every Sunday, a tradition we established to replace the family dinners that used to include Jennifer. At first, her absence was like a hole in the room, impossible to ignore. But gradually, we learned to fill that space with new conversations, new stories, new memories that didn't include her. One Sunday evening, about 8 months after Jennifer was sentenced, Dad and I were sitting on his back porch watching the sunset. He had been quiet all through dinner, lost in thought. "Do you ever wonder if we did the right thing?" he asked suddenly. I knew what he meant. "Do you?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "She's my daughter. She's in prison. Part of me feels like I put her there." "She put herself there, Dad. You just stopped enabling her." "I know that. Intellectually, I know that, but the heart doesn't always listen to the head." We sat in silence for a while, watching the sky turn from orange to pink to purple. "She wrote me a letter," Dad said finally. "It came yesterday. First time she's tried to contact me since the trial." "What did it say?" "She said she's sorry. She said prison has given her time to think, to understand what she did. She said she knows she can never make it right, but she wants me to know that she finally understands how much she hurt me." He paused. "She said she doesn't expect forgiveness, but she hopes someday I might be able to remember the good times without the pain overshadowing everything." "Do you believe her?" Dad was quiet for a long time. "I want to, but I've believed her before, and look where that got me. Maybe someday. Maybe when she's served her time and shown through her actions that she's changed. But not now. It's too soon, and the wound is still too fresh." "That's fair, Dad. You're allowed to protect yourself." I keep thinking about something Dorothy said to me last week. She said that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the consequences of their actions. That real love isn't about protecting people from their mistakes, it's about letting them learn from them. "She's right," I said. I spent so many years trying to save Jennifer from consequences. Every time she made a bad decision, I was there to bail her out. Every time she needed money, I gave it to her. I thought that's what love meant. I thought that's what fathers were supposed to do. "You did what you thought was right." But I was wrong. All I did was teach her that she could do whatever she wanted without consequences. I taught her that my love was measured in dollars, that family meant always saying yes, that she was entitled to everything I had just because she was my daughter. He looked at me with eyes that were wet but clear. "I didn't do that with you, Rachel. Why?" The question surprised me. "What do you mean?" "You never gave me money the way you gave it to Jennifer. When I needed help with your student loans, I suggested ways you could budget better. When your car broke down, I helped you research affordable used cars instead of just buying you one. Why did you treat you two so differently?" I thought about it for a moment. Because I never asked the way she did. I never made you feel like you had no choice. I never manipulated you or made you feel guilty for having boundaries. "No," Dad said slowly. "You didn't. And because you didn't, I respected you more. I trusted your judgment more. I knew that when you said you had things under control, you actually did. Jennifer trained me to doubt her, and I kept giving her money anyway. That's not your fault, Dad."
Maybe not. But it's my responsibility to make sure I never do it again. Not with Jennifer, if she ever gets out and tries to come back into my life, and not with anyone else. I've learned that real love requires boundaries. Real family requires respect. And real help isn't about giving people everything they ask for. It's about helping them become strong enough to stand on their own. As the sun finally disappeared below the horizon, leaving us in the gentle darkness of early evening, I felt something shift between us. For years, I had been the responsible daughter, the one who helped without being asked, the one who never caused trouble. And in some ways, I had resented Jennifer for getting all the attention, even if that attention came in the form of Dad worrying about her and giving her money. But now I understood that I hadn't been invisible. I had been trusted, and that trust was worth more than any amount of money Dad could have given me. "I'm proud of you, Rachel," Dad said quietly. "I don't know if I've ever told you that directly, but I am. You could have let Jennifer destroy me. You could have stayed out of it, avoided the confrontation, let me suffer the consequences of my own naivety. But you didn't. You fought for me, even when it meant going against your own sister, even when it meant being hated by half the family, even when it would have been easier to just walk away." Tears streamed down my face. "You're my dad. I wasn't going to let her hurt you." "I know. And that's what real love looks like. Not the kind that Jennifer showed, the kind that takes and demands and manipulates, but the kind that gives freely, that protects without expecting anything in return, that does what's right, even when it's hard." We sat together on that porch until the stars came out, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for the future that didn't involve rescuing anyone or fixing anyone's problems. Just two people who had survived betrayal and come out the other side, determined to build something better. A year after Jennifer's sentencing, Dad and I attended a support group meeting for families dealing with financial elder abuse. Dad had been asked to speak, to share his story with other victims who were struggling with whether to press charges against their own children. I sat in the audience, listening to him talk about the betrayal, the pain, the difficult decision to pursue criminal charges, and the slow process of healing that came after. His voice was steady, confident, free of the shame and embarrassment that had characterized his early days of dealing with what Jennifer had done. "People will tell you that family is everything," he said to the room full of elderly victims and their supportive family members. "People will tell you that you have to forgive and forget, that blood is thicker than water, that you only get one family. And all of that is true to a point. But here's what I learned. Family is only as valuable as the respect it's built on. If your children don't respect you, if they see you as nothing more than a source of money, then that's not family. That's exploitation. And you don't owe your exploiters anything." He talked about the warning signs he had missed, the red flags he had ignored, the rationalizations he had made. He talked about the importance of setting boundaries, of saying no, of understanding that real love doesn't look like endless handouts. The hardest part wasn't pressing charges. The hardest part was accepting that the daughter I thought I knew, the little girl I had raised and loved, either never existed or had been lost somewhere along the way. The hardest part was grieving the relationship I thought we had while simultaneously fighting the person she had become. After his speech, several people came up to him to share their own stories, to ask for advice. I watched him comfort them, encourage them, help them see that choosing to protect themselves didn't make them bad parents. It made them strong survivors. On the drive home, Dad was quiet, but it was a peaceful quiet, not the heavy silence of earlier months. "Thank you for coming with me tonight." "Of course, Dad. I'll always be here." "I know you will. And that's worth more than all the money I gave Jennifer." "I see that now." We went inside, and Dad showed me his updated financial portfolio. With Jennifer's restitution payments, which were being garnished from her prison wages, and careful budgeting over the past year, he had managed to rebuild about $35,000 of his savings. It wasn't much compared to what he had lost, but it was progress. Dorothy and I are thinking about taking a trip to Ireland next spring. She's always wanted to see the Cliffs of Moors, and I figure I've spent enough of my life worrying about money. It's time to actually live. I looked at the brochure, at my father's excited expression, at the life returning to his eyes, and I felt something that had been absent for so long. Hope. That sounds perfect, Dad.
You know what the best part is? He said, grinning. I can actually afford it. I'm not skipping meals or medications to save money. I'm not terrified every time the phone rings that it's going to be Jennifer asking for thousands of dollars. I'm free. Free. The word hung in the air between us, carrying more weight than any other single word could. Free from manipulation, from guilt, from the constant drain of resources and energy. Free to be himself, to make his own choices, to spend his money on things that brought him joy rather than on a daughter who saw him as nothing more than an ATM. Jennifer was released on parole after serving 3 years of her 4-year sentence. I heard about it through the legal system's victim notification program, not from her directly. The restraining order was still in place, preventing her from contacting Dad without his explicit permission. According to the notification, she had completed several programs while in prison, including financial literacy, addiction counseling for what they called financial addiction, and a victim empathy course. Her parole required her to maintain employment, continue making restitution payments, and attend regular counseling sessions. I didn't tell Dad immediately. He was in Ireland with Dorothy, sending me photos of green hills and ancient castles, looking happier than I had seen him in a decade. The news could wait until he got back. When he did return, tanned and relaxed and full of stories, I waited until we were having our Sunday dinner to bring it up. Jennifer was released last week, I said carefully, watching his reaction. Dad's hand paused halfway to his mouth with a forkful of food. He set it down slowly. How do you feel about that? I asked. I don't know, he said honestly. Part of me hopes she learned something, that the time in prison changed her. Part of me knows that prison doesn't fix people, it just warehouses them. And part of me doesn't care either way, because she's not my problem anymore. She hasn't tried to contact you. No, and she won't unless I give her permission, which I'm not ready to do. Maybe ever. Does that make me a bad father? It makes you a wise one. Dorothy, who had been sitting quietly during this exchange, reached over and squeezed Dad's hand. You can't pour from an empty cup, William. You gave and gave until there was nothing left. You're allowed to keep whatever you've managed to refill for yourself. 6 months after Jennifer's release, I ran into her at a grocery store. I almost didn't recognize her. She was thinner, her hair shorter and simpler, her clothes plain and inexpensive. She was with a small girl, maybe 4 years old, who was chattering away about the cereal she wanted. Our eyes met across the produce section, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then Jennifer took a tentative step forward. Rachel, I know I'm not supposed to approach you because of the restraining order, but please, can we talk for just a minute? I should have walked away. That's what the smart, self-protective part of me screamed to do. But I was curious about the little girl, about what Jennifer's life looked like now. Who's this? I asked, gesturing to the child. This is Emma, she said, her voice catching slightly. She's Bradley's daughter from a relationship after our divorce. He got full custody, but she paused. He died in a car accident 4 months ago. I'm her only family, so I got custody. I stared at her, trying to process this information. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. Jennifer looked down at Emma, who was still examining the cereal boxes with intense concentration. I know I don't deserve anything from you or Dad. I know I destroyed everything, but I want you to know that I'm different now. Prison changed me. And now, having Emma depend on me, it's made me understand what I did to Dad. The betrayal, the taking advantage, the casual cruelty of using someone's love against them. Jennifer, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking to see Dad or to be part of the family again. I know I burned those bridges beyond repair. I just wanted you to know that I understand now.
If you liked this story, then please, from one mother to another, I'm gently asking you, give this video a like. And if you truly love your children, then please subscribe as well.
In the comments, tell me, how many little angels do you have? Thank you, Mama, for watching.